鬼岛之音
Ghost Island Media. Welcome back to the Taiwan Take by Ghost Island Media. I'm your host, Emily Y. Wu. Happy autumn! Today, my guest is Taiwanese science fiction writer Chi Ta-wei. Ta-wei's 1996 novel, The Membranes, has seen global success in recent years. It's been translated for readers across Asia, Europe, and North and South America. It's been adapted for the stage. A play premiered in Montreal earlier this year. And there's been interest in visualizing the story for film and TV. Membranes is a dystopian fiction set in the 22nd century. After climate change has devastated Earth, humans now live at the bottom of the sea. There's androids, there's virtual reality, surveillance, smart gadgets. Our protagonist is a dermatologist named Momo. She reads her clients' memories through their skin. Author Chi Ta-wei is an important voice in Taiwanese queer literature. We begin our conversation with the year 1994. That's the era of Pulp Fiction, 9 Inch Nails, and Nirvana. In Taipei, a bookstore called FemBooks, 女书店, was opened. Artists and students wanting international cinema flocked to the Golden Horse Film Festival. One of Ta-wei's contemporaries is the late author Qiu Miaojing, who is perhaps the most iconic writer in Taiwanese queer literature. Chi Ta-wei talked about why he and Qiu shared a fondness for Europe. We also talked about the Australian writer and translator, Ari Heinrich, who has translated both Chi Ta-wei and Qiu Miaojing's works for English readers. Chi Ta-wei also talked about his appreciation for translators and advice for writers, editors, and publishers who are working on bringing Taiwanese books to the world. I hope you enjoy. Welcome, Ta-wei.
Thank you, Emily. I'm so honored to be here.
Let's start with the book, The Membranes. Mm-hmm. The main character in your book, Momo. Mm-hmm. Momo is somebody, she's told by her mother that she is sexless. She was born inside a peach. She has been isolated since childhood due to an illness, and now she experiences the world by ways of a second skin, a membrane that contains all her clients' memories, even their most intimate secrets. Tell us about this character.
Yeah, thank you. Earlier, during our chatting before recording, I mentioned that 1994 is an amazing year for many creators. Actually, I just read about the significance of the year 1994 according to the famous magazine Wired. In 1994, people witnessed the success of the film Pulp Fiction and a new album from 9 Inch Nails and another album from Nirvana. And in Taiwan, we witnessed the establishment of FemBooks 女书店 in 1994. Mm-hmm. And I focus on this year because of my own narcissism, because I also started to write fiction in 1994. And I published my first story collection in 1994, and in which many of the stories focus on gay, cisgender gay characters and in realistic settings of Taiwan. And it's not surprising because during that time, I was a kind of lonely gay young man who didn't have many gay friends. And so naturally, I would project my desire and my identity and loneliness to my first book. But when I tried to write my second book in 1995, which is The Membranes, I wanted to do something different. I choose to turn to the formula of science fiction instead of realism. And I chose a character who is never normally cisgender, who is kind of between male and female, who is not typically gay like gay men we know in Asia. In some sense, I grew up with FemBooks 女书店 over the 30 years. And I think might have been influenced by the events and the debates on feminism, sexuality, and so on at FemBooks.
Mm-hmm.
That's why in 95, I would want to project a lot of thoughts inspired by feminism in the book.
You called it a magical year. Was 1994.
Yeah.
So after martial law was lifted in Taiwan in 1987, throughout the 90s, there was a wave of very active social movements, including feminism movements and the queer movements.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that time period.
Yeah, thank you. And you know that now I'm an aging teacher at the university, and certainly many would imagine that I envy my younger students, but I secretly think that my students should envy me because I spent my 20s in Taiwan during the 90s when the cultural things in Taiwan were especially exciting. The political changes during the decade are certainly eye-opening, exciting, and significant, and many scholars have written on them. But today I want to turn to the artists in general, those who wanted to writing fiction, making underground movies or in documentaries, performing in small theaters, and I mean that the creators in general. In that decade, people in Taiwan are more willing to put aside financial concerns. They are very eager to prove their own worth or to prove their existence by doing something creative and sharing it to people around them. After 1994, the internet suddenly became hugely influential, and many turned from the real world to the internet. So the real world became less energetic. During that time, when I was in college and in graduate school at the National Taiwan University, while it's true that many friends and classmates, my own partner and I were worried about our financial situation, but we were even more worried if we could not present anything creative to people around us. So, I mean, this very special anxiety might be useful to the readers of Qiu Miaojing.
Yeah.
Qiu Miaojing committed suicide in 1996. It's very sad. But before that, she published several story collections and 2 novels. Now she has fans all over the world, including Ocean Wong, the very famous, very successful Vietnamese American writer. Nowadays, when we read the Qiu Miaojing's novels written in the 1990s, we will find that it's bizarre that the protagonist always insists that they want to make it, they want to be successful, they want to become successful creators, filmmakers, or at least successful novelists.
Can we talk a little bit about Qiu Miaojing at the time when she passed away at age 27? It was a hugely influential icon in queer literature. Some of our Western English reading audience might know of her work from the New York Review of Books.
Yeah.
She and Zhang Ailing are the only 2 Chinese language women to be translated, to be published by New York Review of Books. Her works at the time were hugely influential. And this is when you were writing as well. What was the effect that it had on the writers at the time?
But first of all, I have to clarify that Qiu Miaojing and I are indeed the contemporaries. We went to the same college and we had many friends in common, but we didn't know each other. She is only maybe 2 or 3 years older than I am, so we even didn't know what we look like. Because why? Because
there was
no social media.
No
social media. So in the 90s, while it's true that we young creators in general knew many names of other creators and wanted to know them, but if you didn't go to the places they hang out, it's impossible for you to know what they look like. That's why Qian Jing and I didn't know each other. But it's possible that we bump into each other. It's possible because she and I have the same hobby. That is, both she and I were addicted to the international film festivals in Taipei, locally called Golden Horse Film Festival. It's not so indispensable nowadays because my students can watch films on Netflix. But back then, in the 90s, if you want to watch cool films from Europe, from France, from Greece, you have to go to international film festivals because film streaming was not yet available and DVDs were still unpopular. And the VHS were popular. But usually we only found popular Hollywood productions on VHS. Okay, something very decisive to both Qian Jing and me, that is Anglo-American queer cinema. Queer cinema was emerging in late 80s and early 90s, especially in Britain and in the States. So you have to go to the special film festivals to watch them. And I think that she and I might bump into each other doing one festival. Anyway, I remember a short, dark, and judginess girl wanted to buy extra tickets from me. And that person really happened to fit the profile I heard about her. But sorry, I don't have evidence.
With that in mind of the community that was building, the artist creativity that was booming in Taipei at the time, how did you decide on writing your second book as science fiction?
Maybe it's embarrassing for me to mention Qian Jing's name and my name together from time to time, but I do it not because I want to sound charming, but because I guess it's easier for us to remember the past. Qian Jing and I happen to be samples from many different people from that decade, and many other people might be more successful than us, be more visible than us. But for the sake of convenience, I will focus on Qian Jing and me. I find that both she and I were very yearning for international cultures, especially European cultures. That's why before we wrote our fiction, both she and I went to the same underground film clubs to watch illegal VHS of Italian and French movies. It's so uncanny. I didn't know her when she was alive, but when I read her books after her death, I realized that she and I hang out in the same venues. The reason we spend so much time watching these European films because the films are proxies. What we wanted instead was to travel to and live in Europe in person. But when we couldn't do that, we would just survive by watching the European movies. It's also embarrassing to admit that both Qian Jing and I watch so many European movies in order to imagine escape, departure from Taiwan to Europe. Because even in the 90s, we were not confident that we will survive in the still homophobic Taiwan. We imagined that European countries are so advanced, so they must be very inclusive. They would accept us who are queer people of color. Of course, we are very naive. So what we did were imaginable. As soon as she got a bachelor degree from Taiwan University, she left for Paris. And for me, because I had to serve in the army, so I spent extra years pursuing a master degree and decided to leave Taiwan for Los Angeles after my military service. both her and my trajectories betray that we didn't have enough confidence in Taiwan. And also, when Chen Miaojing was exploring the nightlife, underground life in Paris, I was writing the science fiction, The Membranes in Taipei. And why science fiction?
Yeah.
Also because I didn't have enough confidence in a reality in Taiwan. So I wanted escape as well. And science fiction is usually a wonderful escape for people who are not happy with the real life.
In The Main Brains, it's a highly dystopian science fiction. So yeah, in what you wanted to escape and your reimagination of Taiwan, how did you turn that world? What was that process like, or what was the...
Emily, because you master so many languages, at the same time, may I ask you a question? How do you say 人情味 in English?
Ooh, that's a good one. 人情味.
People say Taiwan, there is a lot of 人情味.
A human touch?
Okay, but may we say that the people in Taiwan are very nosy? And I think that many queer people back both in the 90s and those who are active now are ambivalent. They want to show themselves to people around them because they want recognition, they want the love, they want friendship, and they also want flirtations from strangers. So to be visible to others is attractive. But on the one other hand, to be visible is very risky because, yeah, there might be harassments, stalking, and so on. And of course, to be out of closet is always something heavy to make any decision. And when I wrote the Membranes, I was so fed up with no readers because I think nowadays, especially, many of us know that Lin Yihan's famous novel, Fang Shiqi's First Love, Fang Shiqi's Paradise of First Love, 房思琪的初恋乐园 in the English translation, forthcoming. It's not surprising that the local readers and the readers in China are so nosy when they read a novel. I find that it's very tiresome because as a literary writer and researcher, I really think that we should pay more attention to the text themselves rather than the author's private life.
So how does the genre of science fiction relieve you as a writer from some of these social expectations?
Okay, I think that in some sense, I succeeded by choosing the genre and the format of science fiction when I wrote The Membranes. Very few were nosy when they read a book. And I think because it's difficult for most readers to identify who is who in the novel, and even the city of Taipei is so vague. However, I have to say that maybe I failed as well because in Taipei, the writers have to reveal themselves enough to attract enough readers.
Okay.
The Membranes in Taiwan is moderately successful because it has been discussed by many graduate students and scholars in Taiwan and outside Taiwan, and it is discussed in academic papers. But the ordinary readers are very cool or indifferent to the book because the book cannot satisfy their curiosity about queer people. When most readers are interested in local writers because they are curious about the writers themselves. Many best-selling authors or best-selling books are beautiful women and men on social media. And I think it's not surprising. Maybe you notice that as well. So if I want to be very marketable, I should be visible enough, showable enough to local readers. But the international readers are different. They are not nosy and they cannot be nosy. So in fact, I find my international readers of the various translations are actually much more enthusiastic than local readers. When they are enthusiastic, they are attentive to books themselves.
Actually, so this brings up to something that I think it's quite interesting that in Taiwan, your book, known as Mo, is read in the context of queer literature. But the international version it actually is marketed more as a science fiction with its roots in queer literature.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for your clarification. Because queer science fictions are actually established genres in many other countries. In France, in many other European countries, in the States and so on. So when the readers in the States and Europe find the copies or the membranes, the only obstacle, maybe it's not an obstacle, is that, okay, the book is from Taiwan. Oh, it's kind of unpredictable. But everything else is fine. They are fine with everything else. And the obstacle itself will become an asset eventually. They find, okay, Taiwan might be interesting. We can find engaging authors from Taiwan too. But I have to say that even nowadays, I think that the East Asian writers in general remain very marginalized in Europe and the States. International readers find that they can readily accept the novel, although it's from Taipei instead of London. They are totally cool. But in Taiwan, it's different. Local readers will find that, okay, the book is from Taiwan, but the book is altogether alienating. Readers in Taiwan have been curious and generous and even encouraging to writers of queer texts, even during the martial law period. And then many international friends and readers, journalists are surprised to know that actually queer literature during the martial law period was okay, was permissible. Because the KMT government during the martial law period was only interested in political dissidents. Sexual dissidents in literature could be tolerated. That's why readers could enjoy Bai Xianyong's Crystal Boys, Niezi in late 1970s and early 1980s during the martial law period. But what the readers in Taiwan want to read is something biographical. So if a queer text is semi-biographical, autobiographical, or pseudo-biographical, it can sell. But if it's fantasy or science fiction, readers don't know how to deal with it.
Can we hear a passage from the book?
Oh, yeah. And may I talk about a little bit as a warming up?
Yeah.
I'm going to read the opening passage translated by Professor Ari Henrik, who is teaching at the Australian National University in Australia. And I have to explain why I'm reading the first paragraph from his translation, because he did this for me, so I think that I should do something in return. And but will I talk too much before my reading? Because I think that some information might be useful for many of you. Many people don't know it, but I think that it's okay for me to tell everybody here that Professor Ari Henrik is a transgender person. When I first knew Ari in person, she used to be Larissa, maybe 10 or 15 years ago. And she was a beautiful college teacher. But when I met Ari again, he became a handsome professor. He's amazing, but many, including readers in Taiwan and international readers, don't know how much he has contributed to the popularity of Chen Miaojing and the membranes. So I think that it's fair for me to say something like this. Chen Miaojing's novel Last Words from Montmartre, 蒙马特遗书, was chosen and translated by Larissa Henrik when she was still Larissa. Professor Henrik decided to choose to introduce the novel to the States because she found that the book was relevant to transgender people. And she found that it's possible to interpret some characters in 蒙马特遗书 to be transgender instead of being lesbian. That's why she decided to spend years translating 蒙马特遗书 without being paid and recommended the book to a leading publisher in New York. That's why the book became unexpected success in the US and after that popular in many other countries as well.
That was the year 2014. The year 2014
And she spent many years because she decided to do gender reassessment in the middle of translating Qiu Miao Jing. And after that, Ari tried to locate me and talk to me, and we knew each other, but we were not yet friends several years ago. And he proposed to translate my memoirs, and I told him, no way, you are not serious, and it's not worth translating. Nobody is going to read it. I was sincere, I was honest, and I don't know why you want to spend years without being paid on this book. But he insisted, and again, he said that the memoirs is relevant to transgender readers. It's something it really didn't occur to me. So okay, I was convinced by this argument. If the book might mean something to transgender readers, maybe okay, go ahead.
Let's hear a passage.
Yeah.
So this is from the Main Brains, published in 2021 by Columbia University Press.
Yes. Momo brushed her yellow bedroom wallpaper with her fingers. Then she bit gently into a hothouse peach. Sweet juice oozing from pink skin, so delicate it would bruise if you blew on it. Had she perceived the yellow paper through the direct exposure to her subcutaneous neural network? Was it her taste buds that detected peach sweetness? She would never know. An impenetrable barrier existed her body and the material world. Membranes filter Momo's every impression of the world. At 30, she felt there was at least one layer of membrane between her and the world. Not the kind of membrane she applied to her clients receiving facials at work, obviously. The invisible kind. The kind that made her feel sort of like a tiny water flea, a daphnia encased in a sail, swimming along out to sea. The ocean surrounded her body but never touched her. Momo was a kind of aesthetician known as a thermal care technician. She knew that between her clients' faces and her own hands, beyond the seaweed and the common mask, lay another membrane that prevented her from ever truly getting close to anyone. Momo was acutely unsuited to intimacy. People who didn't know her often found her reticence alluring. Her regulars just assumed she was the quiet type.
So now the book has been translated into English, French, Italian, Finnish, Korean, Japanese,
And Danish.
Danish. There's an upcoming version in Portuguese, in Greek, and in Vietnamese.
Yes.
It's been adapted into a play by a French-Canadian theater director, staged in Montreal.
Yeah.
There is reports that the movie production company Plan B, who is also involved in the recent adaptation of the three-body problem from China, is interested. Can you help us understand this renewed interest in the book? This was published in 1996. And we're sitting here in 2024. Right now on the recording table are 6 versions, language versions of your books. Why do you think this renewed interest in the book?
Thank you for your kind attention. First of all, I have to say that maybe I'm luckier than many East Asian writers. There are so many examples, so I cannot name all of them. But maybe you know that there are many wonderful writers in Korea and Japan, and who were already very successful in the 80s and the 90s. many of their works, major works, are not translated into English until recently. Of course, some authors are luckier, like Haruki Murakami, but I think that he carries a lot of pressure. But other East Asian writers are not so lucky. I am fortunate that the Plan B, the producing company of Street Body for Netflix, is showing interest in considering if it can visualize the book. Okay, yeah, some friends congratulate me, and it's also true that some friends tease me and saying that, oh, maybe it's a hoax, maybe no show will be produced eventually. But I would say that both camps of friends are partially correct, because it's very common in Hollywood to spend years or even decades to adapt a work, a novel, into a film or TV show. For instance, maybe many science fiction productions, movies in Hollywood are actually adapted from novels published in the 70s or 60s. Mm-hmm. And they are written by American authors, so I think that, okay, that's fine. If Hollywood would spend 10 more years to collect investors in order to make the visual adaptation, I think that's fine.
Well, so is it about the global rise of interest in Chinese science fiction, or is it the increased awareness of queer literature and queer identity into the mainstream discussions? Or it's just that it was translated into English and then all of a sudden it exposed to a lot more readers?
I want to sound encouraging, but meanwhile, I don't want to over-romanticizing everything. For instance, my membranes gets attention because of success of Street Body Problem is true. Mm-hmm. There are other facts. Okay, I also need to honor them. For instance, the Street Body Problems is also available in French, and its translator is my French translator, Professor Grenelle. He's very nice, and because his translation of membrane in French is well received, so he was invited to translate the Street Body Problems. Of course, he is happy, honored to do that. My Finnish translator, Ronald, in Finland, is interested in translating the membranes without getting paid a lot, because several years ago, he translated the Street Body Problems into Finnish. Many years before the English translation, the French translation was already there. So they enjoy the membrane way before Americans know the book. And the readers in Japan also knew the book long ago, and maybe more than 10 years ago. Yeah.
How do you, in terms of when we're trying to have more Taiwanese literature translated into global languages, what is the model that, or what is the takeaway from your experience?
Yeah. Meaning that do you mean that you're interested in my advice to other translators and writers who want to promote Taiwanese literature globally, right? Yes, certainly it's something I really want to do, and I'm so happy that I can share the ideas here with you, Emily. I think that first of all, especially in Taiwan, I find that it's important to recognize that because of the social structure of Taiwan and the ideological frame of Taiwan, people in Taiwan don't pay translators in general enough. Financial compensation is limited and the moral support is almost none. But however, I have to say that if we want to sell Taiwanese books, and not only literature, Taiwanese books globally, it's important to be super nice to the translators. Why? Because it is the translators who can sell the manuscripts to international publishing houses.
So they're recommended by translators.
Yeah. Because they are the most important middle people between the local writers in Taiwan and the mega publishing houses and the independent publishing houses in the States and Europe.
Okay.
Without the translators, actually, writers never communicate directly to the publishers. And some writers do that. It's true that some writers in East Asian countries recommend themselves to publishers in the UK and the US. But they might eventually embarrass themselves because they might be good writers, but the editors in the UK and the US don't know how to handle them. They only know to talk to translators. But in Taiwan, many cultural agencies in Taiwan know that they should pay the writers well enough, publishing houses well enough, and even copyright agencies well enough. But they ignore the translators. And they even want to pay them as little as possible. Translators play important roles when international media want somebody to talk about my book in translations. The first people they want to contact are my translators, because my translators can talk about the book in their languages. And this is very important, but I have to say that Taiwan, not only Taiwan, I think that I hear that it's also the case in other Asian countries.
So if you're a writer, then you want to have a good relationship with translators because they are the secret fixers who have existing relationships with publishers that can bring your work to in a market that new to you.
I really encourage my friends who are producing literature in Taiwan to be nicer to your translators. If you don't have, you cannot pay additional compensation to your translators, that's fine, because writers are often impoverished, that's fine. But please show enough moral support and please encourage your translators. It's true that many authors will think that they are the unique creations of their novels. They even ignore the effort, contribution of their translators when they are promoting their books in translations. And I think that it's not okay, because I think that we can say that in the situation, the translators are snubbed, and eventually the writers will be snubbed as well.
Well, thank you so much for today. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we wrap up?
Oh, yes. I think that I really had a good time here. If you want to talk about something more fun, because I find that our discussion today, our conversation today is very serious.
It was. What do you have in mind?
I have to say that the Taiwanese publishing industry is very different now, especially before the COVID and after the COVID. My publisher in Taipei, after the COVID, they are newer employees who are really interested in international copyrights of the books. And they find that there are so many ways to promote the members as well as other Taiwanese titles in other countries. Some of them are very fun. For instance, the newer, younger copyright experts at my Taipei publisher, actually, they talk about the theater in Montreal to produce adaptation. And according to the YouTube clips, you know that it's kind of amazing, right?
We actually spoke to the director in our French language podcast.
If the book can become a play in French, why not a play in Taiyu as well? Because there are already some Taiyu theaters in Taiwan, especially in southern Taiwan. So it's possible that there will be a Taiyu play.
That would be fascinating.
And I have to say that would be shocking and insulting to many. But I have to admit that I haven't seen Three Body on Netflix, and I wouldn't. The reason is, I forgot to mention that this summer I'm going to write a sequel to Remembrance. I have to say that I learned a lot from my book events in Europe after the pandemic. And I was fortunate enough to do book events in Canada, in Italy, in France, and Denmark. I got wonderful responses, but I noticed something. Readers in Europe asked me what are my thoughts on climate change and global warming and transgender movements and non-sexual identity and so on. But I find that I have to decide if they want my thoughts as of 2020 or my ideas back in 1995. And I find that both the readers, interviewers, and me and I are confused. And okay, if we are talking, we have to stick to the novel, the memories. Maybe I should bring up my old ideas back in the 90s. But that doesn't make much sense.
Uh-huh.
And I really want to talk about what's going on. For instance, I am really concerned with what's going on in Ukraine and what's going on in Middle East, and also settler colonialism in general. In fact, the Remembrance is all about settler colonialism because it's about massive migration. So there is a literal colony under the sea. And all these are really what I am thinking now in the 2020s, but not in the 90s. So I realized, okay, if I have to commute between the 2 decades, why not write a new novel? In a new novel, I can criticize my older self. For instance, from the 90s, I took it for granted that the people could immigrate whenever they wanted to. But I didn't mention the price. And many of you know friends who are immigrants, or some of you are immigrants yourself. You know that it's so difficult. You have to pay a lot of price, but I didn't mention any price in the Remembrance. So in the follow-up, I definitely would talk about it. And also something personal. I was very avoided to talk about the gay identity too much in the Remembrance. So I think that, okay, now I am old enough to not to care about nosy readers, so I can really talk about gay identity. Maybe gay identity among aging older men. So I can talk about that. And as well as I find that I have to return to Taiwan. It's very important. As I told you earlier, Kyung Jin and I were similar. Both of us wanted to escape from Taiwan in the 90s. So in the novel, the idea of CTT and Taiwan were very vague. But in the sequel, I want to depict Taiwan as it is, or maybe even Taiwan with a filter of dystopia. That's also fine, but at least I have to show Taiwan, Taipei, or Tainan from my eyes in the follow-up. I should do my homeland justice.
Really looking forward to it.
Thank you. When a writer has to finish her or his manuscript, it's better for him or her not to watch anything relevant, or the writer will be distracted. So I cannot watch any science fiction movie. I cannot watch Three Body. Some colleagues and friends and I do chat about the possibilities of the visual adaptation of the Remembrance. So, for instance, we fancy who can direct the show, who can interpret the characters.
Who do you want to play Momo?
I cannot give any specific name, but I would say that anyway, these are personal, so maybe nobody will take me seriously. But I hope the director and the leading roles are from Korea. The reason is I am a bit afraid that if the director and the leading roles are from Taiwan, the production wouldn't be international enough. If the director or the actors or actresses are from other Asian countries, that's fine. If they are Singaporean or Thai, why I would say this because we know that nowadays Taiwanese directors already know how to make good shows for Netflix, and many are successful. But is it possible for us to move a bit further? If we can make good shows for Netflix, can we co-work with other Asian directors?
Both Korean and Japanese TV had a very established sense of aesthetics that I could imagine would add to the visualization of main brains in a way that's just spectacular. Imagining the colors, the storyboardings, the styles, right?
Okay, how about Thailand? Thai people are amazing. Of course, I think too much, and there are so many wonderful talents everywhere. So whoever is fine. Oh, if Nymphia can do a cameo,
Oh, yeah,
in the show, that's great.
Could she play Momo?
No. She is very busy. A cameo is good enough.
Okay, we'll send out the signals to the world.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for indulging me.
Thank you for telling us so much from the magical year of 1994 of what it was like to be a writer in Taiwan and Taipei at NTU with the rise of bookstores like FemBooks, to your thoughts on the world of translations and imagining the life that's still yet to come for the book Main Brains. Yeah. This has been really, really fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
The Main Brains by Chi Ta-wei is available in English, French, Korean, Italian, Finnish, Japanese, Spanish, and with upcoming books in Portuguese, Greek, Vietnamese.
Already available in Danish as well.
In Danish, thank you. We also talked to the theater director who adapted into a French language play in Montreal. So if you listen to French, please do tune in to our French language podcast. We'll have a link in the show notes. You're very active on social media. Where can listeners look you up on social media?
Usually easy to find me on Instagram. My account is Ta-wei Chi, T-A-W-E-I-C-H-I. And of course, I will tag Ghost Island Media whenever possible online.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been the Ghost Island Media production based in Taipei, Taiwan. I am Emily Waiwu, and this episode is made with help from Wayne Tai, Skylar Nguyen, and Zach Zhang. Thank you for listening. See you next time.